Hi, welcome Internet. This is the Tuesday, April 5th edition of the Jupyter IPython dev meeting. And we're planning on making some changes to the format of the meetings to maybe make them a little bit less of just a verbal reading of bullets that people had typed just prior to the meeting or while the meeting is going on. So, but today, since we just had our all hands dev meeting last week, I figured we'd do a quick recap of sort of the highlights of that, which are also on the Hackpad. So this is mostly for kind of people who check out the notes or have a quick look at these meetings after. The first one was sort of our project scope, that we tried to map our project scope, and it turned out to be a very long and frightening wall. But as we said, world domination as a service makes it hard to makes it hard to say no to things. But we are going to work over the next few weeks on actually drafting sort of a mission and vision statement for the project, where we make explicit and we communicate explicitly sort of what it is that we're trying to do. We're working on basically absorbing all of the outcome of the dev meeting into a roadmap. There was so much work that it hasn't been fully digested yet. But that'll clarify over the next few weeks. Matthias, what do you disagree with?
That all coders should subscribe to this repo, and that everyone should reply to everything. I mean, that's detailed. I mean, we haven't decided exactly whether everyone should subscribe to this repository and how much we should leave PRs open.
Okay. But we will be working on that repo over the next few days to have a fully fleshed out roadmap for the next development cycle. We are deciding sort of how to improve our communication practices, especially with regards to real time. So this is a heads up that we're most likely going to reduce significantly our use of Gitter. We have created a new repo called Jupyter/help. That is really encouraged as a central point for where any question is welcome, and all help questions can be posted, and that way you can basically use them effectively, the repo, as a threaded mailing list where you can easily subscribe and unsubscribe from. And as for the real-time communications, we're sort of sorting out exactly how we are going to do that, but we know that we want to do less decision-making in real time so that it's easier to follow what's going on the entire project. We're going to try to make more explicit the areas of the project. This is part of defining the roadmap and mission and vision statement so that we can break down the decision-making workflow and give more autonomy to teams so that we're not bottlenecking as much as we are right now. We put a lot of time into our community pipeline, basically from I'm new to this project, I need a little bit of help, all the way to have become a core developer. How do we improve that process? And that entails both a lot of documentation work, but also other aspects of the structure of the project to lower barriers to participation and contribution and usage. We have begun a concrete plan on end-of-lifing for Python 2. So that we as the Jupyter project, but also as members of the broader scientific Python community, begin thinking about what will it look like to stop supporting Python 2 and have code bases that are Python 3 only, potentially with sort of long-term support branches of the project where critical bug fixes still get applied, but where all new development and new features are happening on a Python 3 only code base. We're thinking about a roughly 18-month timeline, and the idea of drafting sort of a Python 2 end-of-life manifesto that multiple projects could sign on to and have a coordinated plan that also gives us enough time to work with all of the various channels that distribute these tools so that they have a suitable transition plan for that. There was a lot of discussion about the dashboarding work that the IBM team has been doing, and there's already a link to that on the roadmap. This is going to be most likely one of the next things coming down the pipe for graduation from incubation. The work has been really high quality, and I think everyone is pretty excited about it. The IBM team also gave us and this was actually done as an example, was done with a dashboard, but a rundown of the UX survey that indicated that there's a lot of interest in IDE-like features. There's a link there. We encourage everyone to play with that dashboard and play with the data. It's actually very interesting and very illuminating. And then finally, we had a lot of discussions on what the transition plan will look like for Jupyter from Jupyter to Jupyter Lab. I'm not going to go into the details, but it's actually outlined in the notes, and we'll put this in the roadmap so that we have a clean transition plan that is not only for the end users of how the functionality is going to come into the UI, but also how we're going to make as smooth and as possible, and we know there will be some bumps along the way, but as smooth as possible, the transition for extension authors, so that we build basically bridge APIs that let people get from here to there without simply having to drop their entire code base and rewrite it. The full notes, this is just a very quick skim of the high-level bullet points in 5-6 minutes. Anybody who's interested, there's a link to the dev meeting minutes there, and we will be digesting that into roadmap and teamwork and specific sort of delivery plans in the future. But before we get into individual people, I want to welcome the newest member of the team. We have hired a new project manager. Her name is Jamie Whittaker. And
happy to be here. I'm excited to dig in.
Jamie started officially at Berkeley as of yesterday, and so most of you who are on the dev meeting call met her last week, but she will be a new regular face at the project, and we're very excited to have you, Jamie.
Thanks.
So I don't know, does anybody else have any other high points that they want to flag from the dev meeting for this quick summary? And otherwise, I'm done. I wasn't planning on doing any more detail. Okay, it seems like no. So now let's try to go with things that people actually would like some discussion of, rather than sort of the bullet points of what I did.
So I will start. One thing we decided was to try to move the Gitter channel to Jupyter/help. The question I have is, do we want to do something similar with IPython, or do we redirect the IPython Gitter to also Jupyter/help? It feels to me like redirecting people from the IPython channel to Jupyter/help is the wrong things to do, as we are trying to explain to people the difference between Jupyter and IPython.
On the other hand, we explicitly said that Jupyter Help is a sort of like ask whatever questions here, because we accept that like it's not easy for people to work out what bit they're having a problem with.
And so do we allow any other people from other repositories? Should we ping the people from Haskell, Julia, Ruby, R, and say, hey, we give you right on this repository, and you can redirect your user here, and we can try.
I think we should see how it goes. If it turns out that there are Haskell and Julia and whatever people asking those kinds of questions there, and we can get the developers to answer them, then I mean we said that repo is like we are happy to give people write access so that they can close issues and things.
Yeah, or they can redirect people to their own communities. But there's a difference between the Haskell kernel and the IPython kernel, which is that we write IPython, we don't write the Haskell one. And so the reason for IPython to being there is because IPython is sort of a wholly owned subsidiary of Jupyter.
Sure, but
Haskell is not.
It's a vicious circle. If you get the people from the IPython kernel to ask questions on the Jupyter organizations, and the overlap between the Jupyter and the IPython organization stay high, and then you have no separation. So it was just why I asked the question, because we didn't explicitly ask for that.
No, I think I mean, just like we've been encouraging that most IPython discussions happen on the Jupyter mailing list is a kind of an all-encompassing space for the project. The repo should mimic that. Occasional questions from other kernels, we're most likely to be able to say, you should talk to the experts who are in some other channel, and those communities are going to have their own practices. We're not going to impose our communication model on other communities. But if a question shows up, we'll do our best to redirect them.
Otherwise, IRC IPython channel still links to Gitter IM. If one of you is on IRC every now and then and knows the moderators and people that can...
He's the one who's used IRC most recently, so we should check with him.
Figure out if you
I used to have the channel, whatever that thing is called, kind of the channel control passwords, but I literally lost those probably 8 years ago. I once tried to dig through my various passwords, and I didn't have that one in the password manager. It was because before I'd become more organized with passwords, and I could not get the op control.
Sure,
so we'd have to ask.
So just asking wildly on the internet
if it links to GitHub, someone must have had it more recently.
Yes, like in December.
Yeah, it's possible that that somebody at Freenode or something did that. So we can just ask.
And I have an undergrad here. She's working on Jedi completion on IPython.
You're training her in the ways of the Force.
Yes. These are not the completion you're looking for. And Jedi seems to provide nice APIs, and we are already thinking about changing the shape of the completer in terminal IPython to have a column with the actual completion, a column with some hints of the type of the object, and a third area where you would have, for example, the docstring of the completion you're currently selecting. If you're interested in that, you can come on the issue in the IPython repo and subscribe. We will probably discuss that in the next few weeks.
Is this going to be different? I mean, is this going to be one type of completion when you're at the terminal and a different type when you're over the console?
We want to do the same kind of completion in the notebook for the long term. We want to discuss the design and how we do that exactly.
Yeah.
But basically, many people who explored completion are coming up with the same ideas. We had Will who worked on that last year, and we are trying to converge on some.
Yeah. What I wouldn't want is for the completion experience to be. Especially because you can actually have a terminal IPython, whether it's the in-process one or the console one, and for those two experiences to be very different, I don't think would be a good idea.
No, sure. But I mean, it will require some refactor at Python prompt toolkits to have completer to support more information, likely. But it's just something like if you want to discuss that, it won't be something that will happen in 2 weeks. It's probably something that will happen in the next 6 months. It's just like if you're interested, just telling that it exists.
So I had one high-level data point I wanted to add to the discussion today. At the dev meeting last week, Peter Sylvan and I were talking about graduating declarative widgets in addition to the dashboards incubator. So sometime today after this meeting, we're going to get together and kind of hash out what pieces of declarative widgets can graduate into IPY widgets and Jupyter.js widgets, and what other pieces need to go elsewhere and where they should go. And I think, actually, Thomas, since you're in the room, I should let you know, we'll probably be talking to you at some point about possibly moving declarative widgets into IR or somewhere else discoverable.
Okay. Well, I thought they'd already done declarative widgets IR kernel support.
They have. So, but that lives in the incubator project right now, and the idea is to move that code out of the incubator to somewhere more permanent. And so we just need to discuss about where that may be. Probably not in the IR kernel, maybe in the IR kernel, I don't know.
You mean in the IR kernel like repo or in the IR kernel GitHub org?
The org, I would think. But we can discuss that.
Yeah, I think we're going to discuss all these details in follow-up meeting.
And I would be interested in potentially participating in that discussion if we are talking a little bit about the installing extensions from Bower story and how we're gonna handle marshaling those assets, because I think that's going to be a really important long-term story. Whether we build something that works with Bower today because that's what Polymer needs, or if that's something that we want to look at supporting NPM and other stuff too. I don't know.
So yes, Sylvan, you want to continue on?
Sorry, I was muted. Couldn't find the right window to unmute myself. Yes, So yeah, we're having discussions with Matthias, Carlos, and Thomas on the way to move forward with the inline Sphinxified documentation without breaking stuff in IPython. And so now the question is on the front-end side, what is the best mechanism to render math tracks, but maybe also inline widgets in the documentation in the pager when there are inline widgets in the pager. So, and whether this type of things should be another extension point for NV extensions, probably in Jupyter Lab, or like just something that we hard code in the current notebook or in the current IPyWidgets repo.
Besides what you're thinking is documentation to have live examples that include live code that include and have the documentation window be executable itself?
No, it's the documentation window to have live widgets in that they are rendered by the JavaScript widgets engine. So currently we have a mechanism to have a default fallback image, and when IPyWidgets JavaScript is on the page, to dynamically replace that image with a live version of the widget. So we'd like to make it part of the Sphinx, to have a support for that in the Sphinxified documentation in the pager.
So okay,
but it would be JS only, like JS link only, not kernel communication.
That's right. No kernel communication, just the inline widgets. So yeah, Matthias was wondering about security. So yeah, I think we can take it offline.
Yeah, it's already the case. Once you have your PR with rich doc string that show up in the pager, then documentation can become a vector of attack.
Isn't it great? So yeah, and then there was also the longer term discussion about read-only notebook and the execution model where you can address code by ID rather than sending execution request with the actual code content. And I haven't received much feedback on this mailing list post. So if anyone has an opinion about it, please respond.
There's an issue now, right? Which is 144. So maybe we can continue. So I was going to put a link to the issue here.
Do you prefer feedback in the mailing list or in the issue? It seems like everybody was writing in the issue.
Yeah.
Issue seems better.
Okay.
I mean, we tend to start these things on the mailing list kind of to get a broad announcement, and then traffic, the people who actually are interested move into the issue. So it may be I'll just post. What we can do is we can just post that link real quick on the mailing list just to say, well, further discussion is happening here. I think somebody said I'll continue talking on the issue, but there was no link to the issue. But it's 144.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah, and the reason you're not getting feedback yet, I think, is that everybody is digging themselves out from the backlog hole that they carved last week, and so for the next couple of days, it's going to be a little slow. But I'm glad you posted that. Thanks, because regardless of what we end up doing with it, I think there's a lot of interesting ideas, whether it goes as a main model or as an alternate set of APIs for different kinds of execution. I think there's a lot of useful stuff in there.
For dashboard type of applications, that would probably be the best model, I imagine. But maybe for the current notebook, it might not be the way to move forward.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, but I think it's a very useful technical discussion. So thanks. Jason, unless I think Sylvan.
Am I next?
Yeah, you're next.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention Stephen, Chris, and I had a lot of conversations last week about extending the Jupyter Lab notebook and making custom renderers and widgets work in the Jupyter Lab notebook and things. We're ongoing, iterating through these ideas. Is there anybody that wants to be looped in? After we finish this next iteration, I'll post to the mailing list with what we have now as a solution and get some feedback there too. But is there anybody here that wants to be in on the initial iteration that I should be looping in on discussions?
I'm kind of maxed out with these guys here this week, so
Yep.
I am interested,
Okay.
but I won't have the cycles for it. But
Okay, so then this is just FYI as in this is happening as well.
cool, thank you. And the last one is process questions, but I see Carol's handle on the side. So it seems like this was written by you, Carol. Do you want to go ahead and drive that one?
Yeah, I mean, after working on core Python, there's tons and tons of issues that have sort of over the years gone stale that nobody's ever going to get back to ever again, but yet they remain open. And looking at the repos yesterday and which issues, the notebook obviously has the most open issues right now. And of those 302 open, about 20% are wish lists. So we've sort of culled through them. We've kind of figured it out, but there's nothing actionable in the short term on them other than they might be input for future release planning. So I'm wondering if we want to close them with sort of a nice message or, what we wanted to do as a team. So I just thought I'd raise the issue.
So generally, I'm for decreasing the number of issues on OpenPR. By experience, when I'm going to another repository that I don't know about and I want to dig into what's happening, I prefer to see almost like a really slow number of issues on OpenPR. Otherwise, it feels like the project is like not moving forward, slow down to a stop. So I would be in favor of closing most of these issues with a nice message, and even stalled PRs, close them possibly with a specific tag so that we can find them again. We already had that on IPython, so that people can focus on the only 5 or 10 PRs that are open and can review and move things forward. That's my view on that.
Yeah, this sounds like a good. We've talked about this in the past about being more aggressive about just closing. Just if it's not actually going to be implemented, closing. It might be. So this is a good opportunity for a canned message, so that you write the nice message once and then you can just use it pretty much automatically. And second, it might be. We might want to come up with a very specific tag for this action that is applied to anything that is closed in this way, as in it's being closed not because we said we didn't want it, not because we said we're not going to do it, simply because it hasn't been acted on, basically, so that it's easy. If we want to tell someone, oh, you want to look for wish list items that are kind of have been proposed, that are off the radar, simply add label : this word to your filter, and then those will surface quickly. So they're all easy to find together, whether it's issues or PRs, but they get out of the main view. And we could set a clock limit on things. It could be, I don't know, if anything goes stale for, what do I know, a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever we decide, just get it out of the way. And that way, at least the window of things in our frontline radar is more actionable. Because I agree, we all drown in these endless lists of, wouldn't it be great to fix these 4,000 bugs, and the psychological effect of that is, well, wouldn't it be great to go watch YouTube videos, right? Because there's a point when there's too much on your plate, then you don't do anything, right?
There's cats getting stuck in trees, people.
Exactly. Whereas a limited list is like, oh, I can tackle that. So does that sound? I mean, this is getting into your turf. Does that sound like a?
So John proposed unaddressed wish lists.
Unaddressed, sure. I wouldn't include the word wish list in it because it could be also for PRs or something. But yeah, kind of a one-word tag, unaddressed, could be fine, or I don't care.
Need loves. Needs love.
So would those get revisited in the future? They would be tagged with some sort of...
I would say we let them linger, and typically you encourage searching for things. So the message, the nice closing message should also communicate, if you're going to work on this, reopen it, right? Or ping someone to reopen it if you don't have reopening privileges. Because if somebody finds one of these things and says, I actually care about this wish list item, I'm going to do it, fine, we reopen it. But that way a few pop back up to life every now and then, and they only pop up to life if someone is actually going to do something about them. Otherwise, they're just left on the shelves, and they'll grow staler and staler over time.
Sure.
So I'm totally happy with that plan. I think the only two decisions that need to be made are the one that just the label itself, but let's not get into that right now. Time. Do people think is 2 months of staleness too aggressive? 3 months? I think 6 months is too long. I think 6 months is way too long of a queue. 1 month seems a little too tight. I mean, open source projects have lots going on.
Just for wishlist or for everything? Because we have bugs that stay open because we need to do something on the next major release. So we don't want to close this one.
Yeah.
So just for wishlist?
Now, we could start with wishlist. And I mean, we could say that for actual bugs, we could say a little bit of a longer timeline, but do the same thing. I mean, even for actual bugs, the same problem occurs. I think the point is calling these lists down to actionable work.
Yeah,
we'll fine-tune the details. We can think about a strategy, but we'll try to move ahead with a strategy for doing this. Okay, Carol, how does that meet your wishes?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking putting a time bound on it, like maybe Jamie and I can work on it over the next week or so, and then come back at a dev meeting and sort of say, okay, this is what we think we'd like to do, and just, because this way we'll have some more data on, how sort of the time frame of how long these wish lists have been sitting out there, or the no actions or whatever, but a closer look at actually the data itself.
Okay. And so it seems like the remaining questions are label to use, timeline for wish list items, which could be a little bit more aggressive, a month or two, and a timeline for other things, regular bugs and PRs that maybe it's a month or two for wish list items and 3 or 4 or whatever for other bugs, but applying this systematically across the project, right?
Yeah. Well, or at least the heavy repos.
Yeah. And one question is how much of this could be done by a bot, where literally if we set a hard limit of anything older, I mean, honestly, anything older than 6 months is probably not going to get worked on. So having a bot go through and just wipe them, kind of sweep a Roomba for old bugs.
We need to write a bot that does that.
Somebody must have done this. Okay. Anything else that people would like discussed? And so from next week on, we'll try to go back to this mode where people do type their little bullets, but we assume that the bullets are kind of at the bottom and that they can be left there for a quick scan, and we can all check out what we did, and we can ask questions. Hey, Carol, what is this thing that you put in your list? Can you tell us about it? But other than that, we'll just put at the top, if I have something that I'd like to discuss or ask questions or I need help with, or I want to flag to the team, hey, this is happening or this is important, we put that at the top, and the rest, the reporting is just done in writing. Okay, and that'll keep the meetings even more compact. I'm sorry, Jason, I cut you off.
Yeah, whoever posts the survey of who's going to be here on the dev meeting attendance channel, it might be helpful for them to remind people, go ahead and put your bullets in the day before so that people can see what the highlights are before the meeting.
Yeah, good point.
Fernando, any other parameters for the discussion section of the meeting?
I think it should be the kind of thing that matters to the team at large, and where it's either something where we want a quick decision, or it's just a matter of starting the conversation and moving, and then we move it off channel, right? No one should dump a problem where they need an hour's worth of in-depth technical discussion, because that's exactly what wasn't working in the past. So it's more if in 2 or 3 minutes we can make a quick decision, or it's a good way of rounding up the right people to say, and now we'll continue this on a thread. This is the issue where we'll continue the discussion on the repos, etc. I think that's the only criteria. A, broad interest. B, it should be confined. In your head, you should estimate that that should take no longer than 5 minutes, right? Because that's the whole point, is to have a few of these discussions on the key topics and keep the meetings short and not waste anyone's time. At least that's how I'm thinking of it. If anyone disagrees with me, by all means, say so. Okay, I am going to stop the recording. Thank you, Internet.